Welcome to Perusing's Appraisers on Purpose podcast. Our podcast showcases inspiring appraisers and professionals from the industry who are leaders in their field. How did they get to where they are? What have they learned along the way? What can we learn from them? Your host is real estate investor, entrepreneur, and appraiser, Michael Hobbs.
Well, friends, thanks for joining us for another informative, engaging, and I would say educational opportunity to hear from one of our peers. I'm excited to have Susan joining us this episode. Susan, thanks for being with us.
Glad to be here.
I really appreciate it. Friends, remember, it's your generosity. It's this community of which we openly and really thoughtfully share and connect that really makes a difference. And you continuing to introduce others in the industry to not only this episode, but any of our past 8 seasons is what continues to have this be the number one podcast that has nothing to do with politics, Perea, or procedure. It just happens to deal with the people and what we've done in and around the profession. I'm your host, Michael Hobbs. This is Perusing's Appraisers on Purpose podcast. And Susan, we want to know, were you born this way? Or how did you get into the appraisal and valuation profession?
No, I don't think I was born this way.
Oh, welcome to the community. Neither was I.
And I was not born into it.
Oh, that makes two of us.
So actually, my degree was business, and I had a double major in finance and real estate. So I did have real estate law and real estate appraisal in college.
Yeah.
Then I got out, and I was in retail, and then I was in property management, and I thought about the question of how I got into it because I was thinking it was because of my degree, but really it was because of my mom. She loved driving around looking at houses, and she had thought about becoming an appraiser, and so she took all the classes. So she had the books and everything.
Wow.
And because of my degree, she never did become an appraiser, but because of that, I thought, well, I would look into it more. And because of my college courses,
yes.
And back then there weren't really colleges that had real estate degrees or things like that.
No, it's quite uncommon, actually. I mean, you're real young, so we're not talking about too long ago, but yeah, it hasn't changed much in recent years. There's not a lot of real estate.
So I don't know. They gave me the opportunity to take. So I sent in a letter, and they said I needed to take the 14-hour use PAP. And wait, is it 14? I can't even remember anymore. Is it?
It's use PAP. There's like the 1 day and the 2 day
long
version.
Use PAP.
Yeah, it's like the 1 day and the 2 day version. That's all.
And so I took that, and they gave me the opportunity to take the test. And if I passed, then I could go on to get my experience hours. And if I didn't pass, then I had to start all over, basically. So luckily I passed. Oh, wow. And then I had an opportunity either to take a job with Boatman's in their relocation department.
Okay.
Just working because of my background, or to work for $7.50 as an appraiser trainee with my college degree. And
wow. So you actually got paid. This is impressive. I'm like, you should have one of those, what do they call those things? They used to call them infomercials. Now you should have like a YouTube channel and get people into your pipeline so you could sell them on how to get paid to be a trainee.
I forgot. Yeah. Well, I worked the office as far as, so I put the appraisals together. I glue sticked them and, reviewed them and stapled them and called the courier and, all that stuff because it was just yesterday.
Wow.
But I was actually office support, I think, more than I was an appraiser trainee. But then eventually they started taking me out on properties and things like that. And
wow. So what was it like, Susan? Not many people who have had the privilege of joining us over the last 8 seasons actually had any coursework in real estate. But you mentioned both finance and real estate. What type of classes did you get to take?
So I took appraisal law. I took business law 1 and 2, which was a summer course.
You had to take a class called appraisal law?
Uh-huh.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
I can't even remember. I don't even remember. It was so long ago.
I didn't like business law. I couldn't imagine appraisal law. Oh,
there was, well, I guess it was a real estate law. I guess.
Okay, all right, that might be a little different. I'm like appraisal law? That's way out there.
Yeah, I don't think they could do. I don't know if they could do a whole class, but it was real estate law, and then I had in a class on appraisal. I don't really even remember because it was a little while ago, but
Wow.
so I don't know. Like I said, it kind of put that foundation. It was something new, definitely in colleges at the time because usually you just got a business degree, but they had added the real estate portion of it, and I think they still have it.
I mean, I'm curious. So, based on that massive knowledge you got as a university student, did you go out and buy some properties, and now you're just independently wealthy because you had them for all these years? You just collect rental income?
Boy, do I wish. I don't think they taught me that. I talk to my son about that all the time as far as, he doesn't want to rent because, he's insistent on buying. And I wish I would have probably purchased a house at a younger age. But hindsight's 20/20.
I don't know if that guy is in a relationship or not, but man, if he's single, I would definitely recommend he buy a place with a lot of bedrooms, and then he rent them out to his friends and live in the house for free. It works great.
I'm thinking about doing that when I get older. Buy an apartment building and have all my
Absolutely.
girlfriends.
There's a client. I can see her face right now. Her name's not coming to me. Caroline, I think. No, Chrissy. Forget her name at the moment. But she's got I don't know if it's a 4-unit or a 6-unit building. It's nice. She has a beautiful unit. She's outfitted for herself, and she lives there free because her tenants pay the rent. And there's that lovely law that says when it's owner occupied, you can be very particular in who your tenants are. AKA, you're actually legally allowed to discriminate. And she doesn't really discriminate, but she has beautiful units, so it's easy to get really good tenants. But I mean, it's fascinating. I'm like, wow, this is the way to go. Like
Well, after
life's
working
good.
in property management, I saw a lot of interesting things. It would be nice to be at least a little selective.
Yes, selective is important, especially when you own the asset. Wow, that's something else. So you actually get paid to go be a trainee, and what market were you in this at this time?
In St. Louis, like St. Louis County, St. Louis City.
Yeah, the
St.
central part of the
Charles.
United States. Wow, it's just a good old middle America. And so what was it like being, I heard you say you started out a bit more kind of administrative, operational, and then they kind of brought you into the actual appraising part of the activity as opposed to just what you started out as a trainee. What was that process like?
A little overwhelming at first. 'Cause I don't know. I think training, I don't know if it was really different back then, but basically they took me out. They would fly through, going through a house. I couldn't, they could sketch a house so quickly.
Yes.
And we had grid paper and our clipboard.
Sounds familiar.
Grid paper, clipboard, and my 100-foot tape measure. And I would be like, wait, because, I hadn't learned yet that bathtubs are basically 5 feet wide and, closets are behind closets. And so it took me a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Took me a while. And then, when the first digital camera came out, I think I had a Sony CyberShot 1.3 megapixels.
Wow. That was big.
And so, and then that was kind of traumatizing for the guys that I worked for because at the same time, sketch programs were coming out and digital photos. And so, because before we were always in an office with lots of servers.
Yes.
And, we used ACI and the, servers would crash and I don't know, you'd be in the middle of typing an appraisal report and then you'd lose it. But when they came out with the digital cameras and the sketching program, that gave me the ability to kind of work from home.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
And that's about the time I had my son, so it was perfect timing.
Yeah, that is quite forward thinking and progressive.
Yeah, it was like 1999, I think.
Oh wow, good for you. You and Prince were partying that year. That was quite the experience. So you get this opportunity to work from home, be a multitasker, if you will, taking care of a very important role as mom and nurturing a new one, and still doing appraisal.
Yeah. I don't know. And then he just grew up around it. Eventually, I started my own business. I had appraisemyhome.net. And it was the full name, back in the .com ages.
Great, you had appraisemyhome.net?
Yeah, couldn't get .com, but it was appraisemyhome.net. And so...
I hope you sold that for a ton of money to somebody.
Of course I didn't.
Of course I didn't. I don't love that. I'm sorry for that, but yes, I get it.
I don't know. And then he saw me, I don't know, as he grew up, I worked a lot. I think a lot of appraisers work a lot, and that went through. I used to tell him at 5 p.m. I'll be done, and he would come up to me when I was working still way past 5 p.m. and like, Mom, it is 5 o'clock.
Good for him. I'm really glad to hear that. Having a sense of boundaries.
Tried.
Oh, that sounds quite familiar. Goodness, what prompted you to choose to go out on your own? A lot of people recognize that's fraught with risk, and it's sometimes a low success strategy, but nonetheless, you did that.
I don't know. I think I've always been kind of an entrepreneur at heart. I guess I didn't really know that until I kind of make decisions and just go. And thank goodness that's always kind of worked out well for me. And too hard-headed to quit.
Yes.
But I don't know. I just... I started the appraisal business and then slowly added on appraisers, and I like working with people, I like helping people, and it was fun to see my appraisal business grow. And I don't know, and sometimes I think there's no thought in it, you just do it.
Yes, that is true. I think there's a lot to be said about people with an entrepreneurial streak. They're just it's ready, fire, aim.
Yeah, and you hope for the best.
Yeah, you're like, hey, I'm gonna learn how to fly as I jump out of the airplane.
Hope for the best, and like I said, too determined and too hard-headed to quit. So those things have worked out well for me.
Oh, that is fantastic! Wow, that's amazing. And so you not only struck out on your own, but you actually were building a firm. How did that go for you? How were you able to build the firm? How big were you able to build it?
I had, I had an appraiser trainee back then, and I do think I paid her actually for the work that she did on the appraisal reports, and then I had maybe 5 appraisers, and I was with my appraiser trainee when 9/11 happened. That was really kind of crazy. I remember sitting in my office and hearing, I had the radio on, and you hear the radio, and it's, what was that show a long time ago about the War of the Worlds or whatever? Because it's like, what am I listening to? And so we went from house to house that day, just kind of staring at people's TV screens, and so. But I enjoyed having a trainee, helping her, and I mean, ultimately she became a friend too, and but we had an appraisal company downtown Kirkwood where I lived at the time, and so I don't know, I enjoyed building that, and but of course we went through 2007, 6 and 7. Mm-hmm. And then went back to being a waitress and server like I was in college for a moment. And then they did, and doing that, I think at the time at 40 was a lot different than doing it in my 20s. And they, but then they did that, they implemented the buyer's, what was it? It was like a tax credit. Mm-hmm. They did a tax credit.
Oh, yeah, and that gave a significant boost to the market.
Yeah, so I think I only did that job for like a month or so because
Oh,
then all of a
wow.
sudden I was so crazy busy with refis. And, but I don't know how that worked out so well because then the sellers just dug in and wouldn't, because they knew the buyers were getting tax credits. And so I don't know. I don't think that was super successful.
I don't know. I'm sure there's some economists out there that have analyzed it and could let us know for sure, but we'll just say we don't know.
So, but so got busy again. You just have to adjust.
I totally get that. Wow, that's amazing. So have you stayed in the St. Louis area your whole life?
I did until 2012 when I moved to California.
That's
and
a change, going from St. Louis to California.
And yes, definitely. And then, like I said, I was going to get out of the business. I was a little burnt out at that point. My appraisal business was doing fine, but I was kind of burnt out. And I was going to get out of the business altogether. But as I told you, it's kind of, like I said, the mafia where you can't quite, once you're in, you stay, you can't get out. And so I was on my way. I was 2 weeks from moving to California and got a call that I had a resume on Monster, which I completely didn't know I remembered putting up.
Really?
And they offered me a job as an appraiser in the area that I was moving to. So
Wow, wouldn't we all be so fortunate to just pick up and move and someone just calls us on the way and says, "Hi, Susan. I don't know if you want to come to this part of the country, but we've got a job here." And you're like, well, surprise, surprise, I'll be there in 2 days.
And it was crazy, and it was a really good salary. So I would have been an idiot to turn it down. So I moved out there and eventually started appraising, which I enjoyed appraising out there. It was really pretty.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. And were you doing field work or were you doing desk work? You mentioned salary, so might have been a different type of position, I assume.
It was a salaried appraiser, and so yeah, it was salary, and it was the whole East Bay area and things like that, and so it was enjoyable and definitely different than Missouri. You don't think about the different elements. The first appraisal I went on, I had these capri pants on, and I was like, what is wrong with the back of my leg? And I had backed into a cactus. And I had cactus prongs all over the back of my leg. And so you don't have cactus in Missouri. So
Wow.
I don't know, it was just interesting. Different elements.
That is something else. So all these kind of experiences, one of the which we've had actually very, very few people on the podcast who've actually been a staff appraiser. What's it like being a staff appraiser versus a field appraiser?
The benefits were nice.
Yes.
The regular work was nice. And, in having an actual salary, I could budget my life a little bit better. And the only things, some of the things that in California, there's mountains or like mountainous range or whatever. And a little bit of difficulty when you're a staff appraiser, you have to go kind of where they tell you to go. And as the crow flies, sometimes like they would see when they were assigning me work, it looked close, but what they didn't realize is that I had to go through mountains to get there. So as the crow flies, it looks super close, but to get there, it could take like an hour and a half, or more. I don't know. And here I am complaining about that. I know rural appraisers have to drive way further than that. Sometimes, but that was the only thing, is not really able to define my area that I covered maybe the way that they kept expanding it out to places that weren't quite so close.
Yeah, that makes it a little tougher. I mean, and from that standpoint of being a staff appraiser, obviously the benefits being nice, I assume there's kind of parameters and guardrails of like what to do or what not to do. Is it just kind of like a typical corporate job where you're just salaried and you work and then you don't work, or is it more production oriented, or is it more base plus? I mean, this is a perspective that a lot of the industry is unfamiliar with.
It was salary, and I can't remember because it was a little while ago. I can't remember if there was a certain volume. I'm sure there was kind of a certain volume or expectations as far as, how much I had to do. I didn't, I never remember thinking that it was more than I could handle. But I think over the years, appraisers have felt, everything's faster and quicker. And I don't think back then the pressure maybe was felt as much as maybe appraisers feel today sometimes.
Totally get that. Wow, that's a phenomenal experience. And it sounds like, only because you made reference to the timing of it, that you didn't stay there forever. You're not still a staff appraiser, and you're not still in California. How did your employment there progress?
So the company that I worked for was purchased by an AMC, and they first. I knew I wanted to move to Florida. I said everybody always thought I would end up in Florida, and then it kind of became a joke that I got to Florida via California.
Oh, that's a great way to do it.
I've been going to Florida since I was like the 80s with my family, and I've always loved Florida. And when I knew I wasn't going to be in California anymore, I think California was the catalyst to uproot from St. Louis, because it's kind of scary moving. And so California, I moved there. And then when I knew I wasn't going to stay there, and it was really far from my family and everything like that, I decided if I went back to St. Louis, I probably wouldn't leave again. So I had a house in St. Louis, and rented that out to my ex-husband so my son could go stay there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
While I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I ended up in Destin. So I wanted to be close enough where I could drive to go see my son, in St. Louis, which was 12 hours away, rather than have to catch a plane. And, or if he, and so I was in Destin for 5 years, and then was ready to get, after my son graduated high school. He did come down eventually, and after he graduated high school, then I moved down to Tampa. But when I first was in Destin, they started me doing reviews just in Florida.
Oh, okay. That's amazing. Congratulations on that. And what was it like moving to the review side of the equation, having been a staff appraiser, having been a field appraiser?
I think it makes you more understanding and of the appraiser, and that each one of us is individual, and we have our different ways of doing appraisals. And sometimes I feel like reviewers are given a really hard time, and I don't know, I think I had somebody just when they found out I was a reviewer say that I was the mortal enemy, which I without even knowing me. And really,
don't you love that characterization? I'm like, this isn't Star Wars.
And I was like, you don't even know me. And so I really am pro appraiser. And I think I still like to think that's what kept my job when, after I moved to Florida, or started doing the reviews, everybody at the previous company, except for me and the owner, were let go. And I joke that I think it was part of the reason they kept me, because I used to say I was the fixer. So yes. I could talk to an appraiser when there was an issue. They would start with yelling and screaming at me.
Yes.
And then the question, are you even an appraiser? And I was like, yes, I am.
Wow.
And, I understand. And by the time that I got off the phone with them, because I really did try to help them, and so by the time I get off the phone with them, usually they'd be thanking me, and then I would offer, if they ever had any questions, to feel free to reach out to me. And that's the kind of reviewer I like to be. I'm very pro appraiser, and so I think as a reviewer, something I learned in an Appraisal Institute class about reviewing, what they said, not every appraiser should be a reviewer, and not every reviewer should be an appraiser. And I think sometimes appraisers, the reason they have a foul taste in their mouth for reviewers are ones that have been, not allowed them to be their own person or appraiser. And sometimes you hear people say, well, I would have done it this way. Well, just because you would have done it that way doesn't mean that the way they did it, maybe they could have done a better job, maybe they could have explained better, but when it comes down to it, is there enough information to understand the report and enough support within it? So I don't know, you have to give some flexibility.
The market right now is tough for appraisal companies. Many companies are having a hard time getting enough work with the same marketing they used to. Is your company struggling, having a hard time getting new customers or getting additional work from existing customers? The answer to this problem is easier than you think. Do more business with the people you already know. Over 10 years, the average U.S. appraisal firm meets over 17,000 potential customers. That's a lot of people you could be doing business with right now. But it's a big problem if you don't have a proven process to communicate with them. StoryLux turns this problem into an opportunity to grow. Our advanced AI marketing tool can rebuild your contact lists and harvest long-forgotten communications. Imagine reaching out to everyone you've ever met with just one click. For the cost of 1 or 2 appraisals a month, StoryLux helps you reconnect and market to people who already know you, like you, trust you, and want to do business with you. Act now by contacting StoryLux today to turn your business growth dreams into reality. Email appraisal@storylux.com. That is appraisal@storylux.com. And now back to part 2 of the episode.
Well, that is true. That is definitely true. I mean, and it's a different skill set to review, like you said, and some people like interacting with reviewers. Some people don't. Some people have very good reasons for why they feel the way they feel, and some people don't. But nonetheless, you stuck it out. You continued to develop your skills as a reviewer. And what happened?
Well, then let's see. Oh, yeah. Like I said, then one day I got called and said, "So, what would you think about heading up the compliance or I don't know if I was heading up the compliance department because I had a boss, but let's see, I was like the original appraiser, I guess, in the compliance department, and that's just when USPAP compliance reviews were we had to start doing them. So there was no form. We had like a spreadsheet, and I of course, to be able to do, if I'm reviewing somebody else's appraisal report for USPAP compliance, we need a review form that meets the standards. So I sat down with my USPAP book, because I don't think they were on PDF back then, and started figuring out a review form, and so, which was kind of fun and exciting and a new skill set.
Yes, that is definitely a new skill set, and I think that's one of the interesting challenges for those that haven't had an opportunity to perform appraisal review. I mean, I've found over the years it really sharpens my ability for thinking through the actual purpose of the assignment.
Yes.
I don't know. I haven't really spent a lot of time thinking about why it's that way, but it really has made a big difference in terms of, it's one thing to be engaged for an assignment. It's quite another to review it, and it's just a different perspective of the same coffee cup, but nonetheless, it doesn't always come to the same outcome.
Well, and so I don't know, from reviewing, you're looking at it also. Sometimes I think appraisers get so used to their area that they're in that they forget, like, I'll see an appraisal report that, like in Louisiana, where everything's a lot of things are in floodplains, and they'll say that it's in a floodplain, but then they won't address it if the comps are in a floodplain. Or the same thing like location. Did they make an adjustment for location, and they know good and well in their head why there's a location adjustment, but if it's not explained within the appraisal report, and I would be, if I was back out in the field, I would be a much better appraiser than I was when I mean, I hate to admit it, but the way we were trained back then was kind of like, here's a clipboard and go, and and so I was one of those people that checked the highest and best use box. Nobody told me to do anything different, and and I didn't really appreciate. I took USPAP and USPAP updates because I had to, but I didn't really understand that if you really kind of look at it and go by what that it will better protect you and that you will do a better report. So if I were back in the field, I would be a much better appraiser probably than I was. And I think I was good, but I would be better.
I think many people would say the exact same thing because of that impact that the role and responsibility has for them doing it.
I'll tell you, I do wish, and I don't know how we can ever get this, but I feel like if people, like when they are trained, because the trainees are looking for supervisors.
Yes.
And I wish there was a way that they could, like, do these reviews or, like, I don't know, see what we see, because we see appraisal reports all across the country, and they vary greatly. And I wish trainees could start almost with reviewing, and I don't know how that process would look, but because we see so many different reports, and you're not looking at just your supervisor's reports, you're looking at reports performed by so many different people. I think that once they're in the field, they would have, and doing their own work, that it would be better, just like I think mine would have been better. But I don't know, how do we do that, Michael?
You know what? I was chatting with, is it John? I can't remember who I was talking to, and I was sharing back 20 years ago. I remember sitting there, based on my experience in two other industries, Susan, and I really felt that the idea of a nurturing school or a finishing program, akin to the way so many other industries have, would really make sense. I mean, people get an opportunity, they pay tuition, so to speak, to go through a curated program and graduate, much like they would from an associate's program, and be queued up for employment with ready, willing, and able employers. I was like, it's fascinating. But I got busy, as we did, with the markets back then, and never did anything with it, and the problem still persists.
Okay. Well, if you ever think of a solution for that, please, I keep trying. We do put out information and videos and things like that to try to help appraisers, because that was the other thing I saw when doing USPAP compliance reviews. First of all, a long time ago, I was in Arizona and added on to my vacation time and did appraiser met with the appraisers. So it was kind of a business expense.
Yes.
But and I asked the group of appraisers if they knew that their appraisals were being reviewed for USPAP compliance, and I think one person knew. So, and
one person knew. Boy, that's encouraging.
Yeah, and then the other thing is, as an AMC, we're reviewing for it, but that I saw the same deficiencies over and over and over again, because that information was, as far as what the deficiencies were not being relayed to the appraisers, which really that's not the appraisal management company's job, and it would be very, labor intensive as far as staff and things like that. But now that I have my own company, I can do different things like the videos or different things that I can at least help get that feedback to appraisers to help them address some of the most common deficiencies that we see.
Wow, that is fantastic. So how does that morph into what you're doing these days?
So then, like I said, I did the reviews for Florida, then started doing the USPAP compliance reviews there. And then my mom, she was really ill, and I didn't feel like I could juggle being, I don't know, I felt a little guilty taking a corporate salary and trying to juggle that time that required, and then also take care of my mom. So I left that and then just started doing like contract work for the USPAP compliance reviews.
Sure.
And then and did that for several years. And again, like in wanting to get the feedback to appraisers and things like that, I just had some ideas and and seeing the most common deficiencies and everything like that. And also, there's no real set form, like, the form Fannie Mae 2000. There's no really set form, and kind of one of the cool things was, being able to develop a form that addressed all those items, all the USPAP items. And then we also included, even though it falls under USPAP as far, but things that I saw that increased risk exposure for the appraisers, the clients, and things like that. So that's how I ended up developing my review form, and then it just keeps growing from there.
That's wonderful. That is amazing. So who do you typically work with these days, given the firm that you've created?
Our primary client has been appraisal management companies, and we mostly do the USPAP compliance reviews, but we're also expanding out. We do some quality reviews when, a company may be thinking, needing to know if an appraiser needs to be put in front of the removal committee. We'll review multiple work samples to see if it was a one-off, or if there's an issue. And then we'll give an opinion back also, like if maybe there was just room for coaching, maybe the appraiser just needs a little help rather than actually being removed. And so we do that, and we work with family law attorneys reviewing one more appraisal report. Mm-hmm. We're trying to get more in the lender side. I enjoy the compliance part aspect of it, and I think that kind of sets us apart as far as that compliance background.
Yes.
And we're developing products that do that work, as far as opining on quality, compliance, and the overall strength of the report. And then we do the videos, and I don't know. I have a 7-hour CE class in my head. I just have not had the time to put it together.
Well, maybe you start with less than 7. Maybe that would be easier.
That would probably. What do they say about elephants? One bite at a time. That
is exactly it. That is exactly it.
I do have more help now than and so having help definitely helps me concentrate on other things as well.
That is a great way to have a focus more than anything else. And like I said, one bite at a time, just kind of pulling it off and keep moving forward. That is, wow, that is something else. So, given your time in and around the industry, you've seen a lot of different segments of it. What have been some of your biggest learnings?
There is no perfect appraisal.
Yeah, that is true.
I guess I think it's hard to be. I feel for the appraisers that are in the field because of technology, everything is expected faster, sooner. I think that puts a lot of pressure. Sometimes we see appraisers that do an excellent job on the quality of their appraisal report, but sometimes there's the potential that their scores that they get with the AMCs is not as high, because sometimes doing that really good quality, sometimes it takes them longer, so it affects their score. I don't know. Let's see. I think they want to do a good job.
Sure.
And I think that anything that we can do. A lot of appraisers are still working by themselves. There are more companies out there, and that are appraiser companies, and I think they have a lot more support. Yeah. I can even see the difference in that sometimes within like when I'm reviewing some of these companies, because they have so much support within the quality of the appraisals. Sometimes it reflects in the quality, because really? So I don't know. I thought that was interesting. And but and of course technology, I couldn't do an appraisal in the field now if I wanted. The very first sketch I ever did on an iPad or whatever, it was in California.
Okay.
And when I closed the house out, when I went to go close the house out, I pushed something and the whole sketch went away, and I had to go ask the people if I could please measure their house again, and that did not instill confidence in me. So I hate to say I'm old school, but if I was out appraising, I would still have to be using my tape measure, and I don't even know how to use a disto. I'm embarrassed to say. But I don't know. I think technology does now allow us to do them faster. You're not drawing, and so I think that's it. But and then with groups and stuff like that, I do think there's more support. I think we need to be nice to each other. Sometimes I feel like people are afraid to ask questions because they're afraid somebody's going to get after them, and they're asking the question the reason they're asking the question is because they need help or they truly want to know. And because it's a little scary to ask questions sometimes on some of these forums because, I don't know, you don't know who's going to answer.
That's true, actually.
Be nice. Be nice.
Yeah, be nice. That's true. Helpful. That's true. This is that relatively small industry. You're gonna see people again.
Yeah, be nice, help each other. I mean, we're all, heck, I get so excited to see appraisers. I told somebody the other day that I met an appraiser out in the wild and they thought that was hilarious, but you never, I was at a networking event, not real estate related at all, and I ran into an appraiser. That was the one that said I was his mortal enemy, but... But he didn't even know. But I was just so excited to run into an appraiser because unless we're at a conference or something like that, I never run into other appraisers.
Yeah, I have a similar experience, having been a member of Entrepreneur Organization for the last 15 years. Global organization of business owners and entrepreneurs that meet certain pretty stiff requirements. I think I've only met one person in Canada, two people I knew in the United States, both have exited the industry, and but the beauty of it is being around those 20,000 other business owners and entrepreneurs in completely different industries provides such a perspective, to your point, that I would never come in contact with if I only talked to people right inside the industry in terms of ideas, opportunities, challenges, new technologies. And I just kind of sit back and I'm like, I don't understand most of it, but at least I'm exposed to it, so it doesn't come across as a complete surprise when it finally gets to the real estate and valuation profession, to your point. I love what the former CEO of GE, Jack Welch, used to say, and he's like, look, go surround yourself with young, smart people who do things completely different from you, just so you broaden your knowledge for no other reason. Susan, I really hear you saying that as well.
Yeah, I depend on that. And then, and I do, it is exciting though, like conferences and meetings where I can sit down and talk to other appraisers. Sometimes I think appraisers don't realize how beneficial that is, because not until I started Appraisal Aid and I started really promoting the company, going to conferences and stuff like that, like I built my business on the connections I made, and I have so many different people that I can call if I have a question, or like we help each other out, and I don't know, I just think it's amazing.
No, that's a wonderful thing. Is that say a little more about that practice that you have?
What do you mean? What practice?
About being in communication with people and not staying isolated.
Yeah, no, it's, not only just conferences, like, I mean, anybody can go to, like, the Appraisal Foundation's Industry Advisory Council and to hear what's going on, and you meet people and, like, the different conferences that are out there. We just got back from ACTS in San Antonio, and I have just, like I said, not only do they become business associates and we help each other, but then they become friends, and and I just think and even if you don't have your own company, there may be opportunities within the company that they're working at. They may be looking for appraisers. I thought it was really cool when I was at ACTS. I met two trainees, and because they have a couple days where they have stuff just for trainees and supervisors.
Yes.
But I met trainees, and I told the trainees, because I know trainees are so frustrated trying to figure out how to get into the industry and getting supervisors. But I told them the fact that they are there.
Yes.
says volumes for them, and to not give up. And so I don't know. I just think I'm really grateful for all the people that I've met, and we all have different things that we have different strengths, and so I have other people that I can call when I have a question, or I'm not sure, or just to bounce an idea off of, because appraisers that are working all by themselves and don't have anybody when they have a difficult property or a question, like when I review, if I have one that a fail for us is something that likely warrants going to the state. And so I take that really seriously, and not that many fail, but we might have a minimally acceptable, but not many fail. But before I fail, I usually call one of my other reviewers and we discuss it, just so I have somebody else's thoughts on it, besides my own.
I think that's fantastic. I mean, given everything that you've seen and heard and experienced, what are you optimistic or looking forward to over the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, I think there's always going to be an opportunity for reviews on our side, and I think the need for that, because I think risk mitigation is becoming a bigger and bigger concern. I mean, it's always a concern, but I feel like, I'm excited, I guess, from the company's perspective, is I think there's always going to be the need for reviews. I hope it becomes a little easier for the trainees to get into it, because I do think we need, appraisers. I get a little. I think the new UAD is going to be really good once it's implemented, and I think we have a lot of old school appraisers, and so I'm a little worried, and I think there's other people that are worried that every time there's a major change, like when things went from digital cameras and sketches, people got out then. Like whenever there's a major change, some people just don't want to change, and they'll decide it's time to retire. And we have, so hopefully, that doesn't happen, and too much. So, but I don't know. You hear people talk about it. I think if people are exposed to it more and and realize it's not as scary as they think it is, that that maybe that won't happen. But
I love that.
We all know we need people,
Yes.
new people in this profession to keep it going, and so I think anything that we can do to help that. And if we can ever figure out a way to help that, I would love to be able to help trainees like with experience just far as on the review side. I don't think they can get. I don't think they get. I don't think they can get hours for doing like one of our reviews. I don't know. I haven't really looked into it.
You know what? That sounds like a great opportunity that you could look into.
A good thing to, I don't know. Again, like I said, I would have been a better appraiser. I think if people saw other people's appraisals rather than just one, like just their supervisor or just the office they're working in, because usually everybody's working off of a similar template in an office. And so if they're seeing other people across the United States, like I said, I think it would help them in the long run.
I definitely agree with you. Well, I just want to say how much I appreciate you coming on and sharing your perspective and experience, because it's the generosity of peers like you, Susan, that really allow not only myself but so many others to gain an understanding of what's possible and what's probable. And given where you started from, with coursework to turning down a particular job to take on an entry-level one, and where you're at now as a entrepreneur and having a positive contribution in the industry, it's really encouraging. I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome. Encouraging, that's what we got to keep doing.
Nobody wins if everybody's trying to take a hatchet to the base of their own tree. That seems stupid to me, but I think, was it Forrest Gump that said, stupid is as stupid does? I think we could have an industry a lot less stupid. And more openness to change. I mean, that's the only certainty is, I say death and taxes. I think it's death, taxes, and change. It's pretty much a guarantee whether you like it or not. And so we all are better off with just a little more openness there. So hopefully, your contribution makes a little dent in the universe.
I hope so. That's my goal. Make a little dent. Make it a little bit better.
Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Well, again, thank you so much, Susan. And Susan, for those that are interested in following up with you, so many of our listeners love the opportunity to connect with their peers. How can they find you?
You can find us through our website at appraisalaid.com, and it's AID.com. Or, of course, you can always email me at Susan, SUSAN, at appraisalaid.com. But always happy to answer questions or help if I can.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Again, Susan, thank you so much. You have a fantastic day. And listeners, until our next podcast, thanks for your generosity in sharing and paying it forward. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Appraisers, Appraisers on Purpose. We hope you enjoyed learning from the amazing professional paths and achievements of our beloved guests. Before we go, please subscribe on your listening channel, Spotify, LinkedIn, YouTube, and other podcast channels to hear more from appraisers and valuers regarding their life and their work. After you drop a comment below, who is one friend and peer you can generously share this episode with? If you have any suggestions or questions for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. Just send us a message on LinkedIn and we'll be sure to get back to you. Thanks again for listening, and until we're together again for the next session of Appraisers on Purpose, create the change that you seek.